Welcome to Discovery Weekly, the podcast from the Podcast Discovery Show that's about all the other things that we've discovered throughout the week. I'm Kirk.
And I am Zach.
And your brother, Zach, Gabe, sent me this article and asked if I had heard about this. And I read it and I said, no, I have not heard about this, but there's no way that I'm not talking about this on Discovery Weekly because it is an amazing story and about a product that most of us know of, or if not used. And it's about the story about Burt's Bees.
Okay.
So I'm going to read a lot of this article because it's written very well. And I don't think my paraphrase is going to be as good as what some of the writing. A few years ago, Noel Hancock wrote a story for Cosmopolitan titled Why I Gave Up $95,000 Job to Move to an Island and Scoop Ice Cream. The post went viral, and thereafter, after other former members of corporate America surfaced to share similar stories, each had a common undertone. Their jobs were unfulfilling and soul-sucking. So they shipped off to paradise where their salary was axed, but their happiness multiplied. Burt Shavitz also wanted to ditch his shiny career for a simpler lifestyle, but instead of taking a pay cut, he became a multimillionaire. A little backstory, though. Shavitz is the founder of Burt's Bees, hence the fortune. But he isn't your typical glamour beauty brand owner. He once was a photojournalist who shot the likes of JFK and Malcolm X. But he moved upstate after, and I love this, there was like a pivotal moment, like this one moment that he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. It says, he moved upstate after snapping an image of an elderly neighbor looking out her apartment window. This is a quote from him. I knew that would be me, 90 years old and unable to go outside if I didn't get the hell out. And what he did out of the concrete jungle and into the fresh air and sweeping lands, and that he did. He left. He just went to the woods, essentially. It was this exact reconnection with nature that would serve Shavitz his success. One day, while gathering firewood, he came across a fence post surrounded by a swarm of bees. He'd previously been gifted an empty beehive, so he had this random beehive that someone had gifted him, but he had no bees. So the encounter with the bees, as he put it, was an act of God. From there, Shavitz would cultivate several other hives, fostering the honey and wax, and well, the rest is history. Sort of. Basically, the rest of the story is he inherited this piece of property from his grandfather that had a 400 square foot turkey coop, and that became his home. Had no electricity or running water.
I got to switch to some. You guys got to see this thing. So we're going to have all this in the show notes for the podcast listeners, but I'm going to have to break out some so they can all see this.
He met his business partner and his life partner, Roxanne Quimby, because she was hitchhiking. There's just so many, little things of this story that are just crazy. So he met her while she was hitchhiking, and he encouraged her to repurpose his wax that he had left over from his bees into candles and what would later become Burt's Bees' hero product, lip balm. By the way, the recipe, guess where he found it, Zach?
Where?
He found it in an old farmer's almanac.
Did he?
That's where the recipe for freaking Burt's Bees lip balm came from.
Yeah, I made sure to highlight to everyone, at least so you could see Burt and you could see the turkey coop.
Yeah. Quimby outsourced an artist to sketch his face for the product packaging, and the brand took on its own now famous namesake, and his face has been on the label ever since. It eventually got bought by Clorox for $970 million, so almost $1 billion this company got bought for. There was definitely some weird business stuff that happened, but this guy has always been a simple guy, and he basically got only $4 million from the buyout because of crazy personal things along with business things that really ruined the relationship with him and his business partner. But it's just this crazy story. And I think he literally went back with that $4 million and went and still lived in that shack with his dog. What was his dog's name? I think it was like Rufus.
Rufus is a great dog name. It is Rufus.
Yeah.
Golden Retriever named Rufus.
Yep. And it says in July 2015, Shavitz passed away at the age of 80, but his legacy is immortalized in yellow labels sold around the globe, far beyond his anticipation. What was once a roadside honey business morphed into a billion-dollar company with a product line spanning makeup, skincare, hair care, baby products, and its latest and most unexpected venture, protein powders. I didn't know they made protein powders, but apparently they do. But that is the story of Burt's Bees and the founder, Mr. Shavitz.
Yeah, that's wild. And honestly, the very beginning part is always been so interesting to me. You know, the why I gave up $100,000 job to move and scoop ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been because you hear people talk about it where like money doesn't buy happiness and like you can be very successful, but if it's like killing you emotionally and like mentally, people will bail from it, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to hear of somebody that he basically made it, but also that exact same like spirit of I'm just going to go live and be happy is why he found these things. Like he had just a random beehive that he probably bartered for. Like, you know what I mean? He got it. Just somebody's like, hey, you want this? He's like, okay. And so all of it was just kind of fitting to his journey. So it's always interesting to hear that type of story for sure.
Yeah, and the fact that like, you know, he just took this picture of this old lady that in her apartment looking out the window, and he's like, I just don't want that to be me inside of a city, inside of an apartment. Like, he just didn't want that. So it's crazy that there was this pivotal moment where he's like, nope, not doing that.
Yeah, I haven't used Burt's Bees in a while, but I definitely did.
Yeah, I liked it. I like it. I mean, I didn't know it was bought by Clorox. I didn't know they owned it. I thought it was still kind of a small company. I am
Did
very
they put
wrong.
bleach in it?
I think Clorox owns a lot of things that don't have bleach in it.
So I discovered something this week because Kirk and I were talking about it at work. I think we were talking about Friday the 13th, or I can't remember what the number we were talking about was. We were talking about like, why is Friday the 13th a thing? And
just
so
the
I
13, like 13, I think we were talking
lucky
about. Like,
13 or like unlucky 13
why is
type thing.
13
We're
an
like, why is that
unlucky
a thing?
number?
So I found this National Geographic article that talks a little bit about it. And one of the cool things that I found out is this is not specific to America, and other countries have different unlucky numbers.
What?
So for us, they say the 13th is thought to be unlucky because the idea that the number 12 is complete. So like 12 apostles, 12 months in the year, 12 zodiac signs, and then 13 is just off of that. And that's just that was from a senior research fellow and paranormal investigator for Skeptical Inquirer magazine. But in other countries, there are different ones that are unlucky. So in China, the number 4 is unlucky because the pronunciation of the word in Chinese is similar to that as the word for death. So just like in America, where a lot of times construction companies will skip the 13th floor on a building.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'll still be there, obviously, because that's how numbers work. But
that's what always blew my mind. Is like it's still the 13th floor. You just put the number 14.
Yeah, they put 14 on it so that people don't get scared. Yeah.
When I was a kid, I thought that the 13th floor was just empty. Like the 13th floor existed, but it was empty.
They would never
like, that's
give
creepy.
up that money. They would never give up that money.
No, I know.
So basically, just don't
I know
go
that
to the
now.
14th floor. They're lying to you. But yeah, no, just like that in China, they'll sometimes skip the 4th floor because it sounds like death, the word death. And apparently 9 is the one in Japan because it sounds similar to the word for torture or suffering. So all of theirs make more sense than ours.
Theirs does make more sense.
They just don't like it. They're like, ugh. It makes me think of like death because it sounds exactly like death. Some Italians are superstitious about Friday the 17th because if you rearrange the Roman numeral 17, it can create the word, it's like vixi is what it looks like. And translated from Latin to mean my life is over.
That's like very abstract, I feel like.
That one's more of a reach to me. That one, and it says some Italian, so I don't think it's very popular. The number 39 gets a bad rap in Afghanistan Many Afghans say that the number 39 translates into mordagao, which literally means dead cow, but is also a well-known slang term for a pimp. So
Oh,
there's that. So yeah, you don't want to wait. Dead cow is a slang term for a pimp.
that's what I was thinking. That's what that you buried the lead there. That's weird.
I'm curious.
Now I want to know why that's the thing, but that's
But
for a different discovery.
then we get to probably the one that Kirk and I are most familiar with because it was like something we grew up with. The fear of the number 666.
Oh
And
God.
this phobia has a literal name that I'm going to put in chat right now, and I'm going to try and make Kirk pronounce first.
Okay.
All right, check that out.
Okay. Let me
That
see
is the
here.
fear of the number 666.
Hexacosio hexconta exaphobia.
Yeah, like it was something like that. It's like hexcosia hexaconta hexaphobia. And basically all it is the first, like all the Latin in the front is 666 phobia. That's basically what it means. It's very literal from Latin. But this is we were familiar with this in the Bible. In the book of Revelation, John the Apostle refers to 666 as the number of the beast. And typically they think the beast is like the Antichrist or the devil. And so that one makes sense religiously based, but it was just crazy to hear about all of that. But apparently that word, the fear of it, literally there's people who will go out of their way and like avoid anything with that number. And like they feel like an irrational sense of its control over them and stuff like that. It's far beyond like, I mean, even when I was like in school and they were like, everybody was worried about the mark of the beast. It's like, I'm pretty sure that's really on the nose. Like if somebody would be like, you need to get 666 on your forehead, it'd be like, no, like that. It wouldn't.
I know what you're
Yeah, it
doing.
would have to be more subtle than that, right? Like it would have to be more subtle. Like you should put this devil number on your face. It's gonna be good.
But
Yeah,
there's
no,
so many rock songs that if you play it backwards, it says 666. Zach,
I mean,
didn't you learn
honestly, if you
anything
put
in
anything
Sunday school?
backwards, I feel like it's kind of the same thing as listening for like ghost voices, where they're like, "Do you hear that?" And then they put subtitles under it, and you're like, "Kind of." When you like tell me what I'm listening for, like, not exactly.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
No, I know.
There was definitely so much like fear and stuff,
Oh no,
specifically
like
around
they
kind of
definitely
things
take
like
it
this.
seriously. They take
Um,
666 seriously. Like if you were to just go spray paint that on a church, they would lose their mind and think that Satanists were coming to get them.
yeah, yeah. But that's an interesting word. I'm going to say it one more time. Hexacosio hexakente exaphobia.
Perfect.
Getting better
Nailed
at
it.
it.
It is a crazy word.
Speaking of things that need explanation, like these irrational fear of numbers or these unlucky numbers, I've always been fascinated by English idioms and like, where did they come from? There's so many, and there's just like I can't talk about all these because there's seriously so many. But like turn a blind eye, that one's one that I'm like, what does that mean? And apparently there was this British admiral who had one eye that he was blind in, and if there was something on the battlefield that he didn't want to see, but he wanted to act like he was looking at, he would literally look through the like looking glass with his blind eye. And that's where it came from. Was this dude would like pretend he was looking at something through his blind eye, and that was kind of his thing. He's like, I turned a blind eye.
I mean, I'm sure the other people on that ship are like, man, we know that eye doesn't work.
You have an eye patch.
Stop lying to me.
The phrase feeling under the weather, that has to do with like sailors and stuff like that, where let's say they get sick or anything like that, they would go under the ship, like into the bottom part of the ship where there's not as much rolling and movement, and they would be now under the weather because they weren't feeling good.
And that's why they call it the poop deck.
That's a different one. That's actually not an idiom. That's just why do they call it the poop deck? I don't know why they call it the poop deck.
You know why.
Look that one up later.
It's self-explanatory.
Beat around the bush. Apparently, back in the day, they would do these grouse hunts in a lot of this is from like England, like old English stuff, and you would have to like beat the bushes to get the grouse to come out. So stop circling the point and get to the point that you're trying to get at. Stop beating around the bush. Just get the freaking
Just hit the bird with the
just
stick.
get the bird. Spill the beans. That one was an interesting one. The ancient Greeks would vote, but it would be secret votes like in their government, and they would use different colored beans. But if the person that was holding the bag of beans were to drop it and spill it, it would reveal the election before it was intended, and it no longer would be a secret. It's just so weird. Here's one that I like, and one that I thought was fascinating. The whole phrase, the proof is in the pudding.
I've always wondered about this, actually.
So this one...
God, that picture's disturbing. I need to show everyone. This. That is, if you can't read the text, that says steak and kidney pudding.
That's the thing, is like for us, we're thinking of freaking chocolate pudding, right? I mean, that's what I think of pudding, or vanilla pudding, tapioca pudding, just pudding, like what we think of as pudding in the US. But really, it has to do with the British people would make these puddings, which is basically almost like a pastry, like a puff pastry around something in the middle, meat, minced vegetables, or something like that. And the actual saying in Britain is the proof of the pudding is in the eating, which makes more sense, but also is more of a mouthful and doesn't seem as catchy. But it has to do with you don't know what's inside of it until you eat it, until you open it up.
And inside is steak and kidney.
Gross.
Disgusting.
Gross. So yeah, there's just so many fascinating things that we say that a lot of times we don't even remember where they came from, but we know what they mean. And it's funny because when you're talking to someone that understands your language but doesn't understand some of the cultural stuff, we very easily say stuff like this and they get very confused.
Yes.
Because we understand, and there's a lot of context to us growing up in it, but there's so many and I'm very fascinated by other cultures as well. Every culture has their own idioms. So it's very I don't know. I always thought that it was a fascinating thing where you get these sayings and things like that. I'm always saying stuff as well that my wife's like, "What did you just say?" I'm like, "That's a saying." But most of mine are like redneck sayings that I grew up with my dad saying or something.
There's a good biscuit at the bottom of every slop bucket.
Exactly. Yeah.
First of all, I don't agree with that idiom.
No?
I don't know. There's a good biscuit at the bottom of a slop bucket. No, I just remember that from our teacher.
Yep.
That's the only time I've ever heard that. He also said it's pecans because it's trash can, not trash con. So that's words to live by.
Okay. That's what we learned in school, guys.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be right back with more discoveries right after a word from our sponsors.
This week's episode is brought to you by the Right or Wrong podcast. The Right or Wrong podcast is a chapter-based fiction serial podcast. It's not just any old fictional narrative podcast, though. Host Patrick Emile creates the narrative episode to episode, and he invites the listeners into the writer's room to help choose where the story will go.
So I always listen to some of these podcasts before we talk about them in our ad spots, and I was going to listen to just one episode, and I picked the story arc, The Canyon, and it was like, I think 3 or 4 episodes long, and I ended up listening to every single episode of that arc because I loved it so much. And at the end, when he asks the audience which way they want to take the story, I wanted to know the next week what they chose. So it's just this really cool collaborative choose your own adventure story, but in podcast form. And they've got great voice acting, the awesome sound effects, and a completely original soundtrack. I went on their website and they've got so many like top-notch actors doing the voiceover and stuff. It's great.
And here's the best part. Season 2 of the Right or Wrong podcast starts in late February, so there's plenty of time to listen to all of season 1 and get caught up. Find the Right or Wrong podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, and remember it's Writer with a W. This episode is sponsored by The Pop Culture Show. The Pop Culture Show is a show that gets into the nitty-gritty in the world of TV, music, movies, and celebrity news. This isn't hosted by just anybody. This show is hosted by 3 friends that have known each other for more than 30 years and have a long tenure in the entertainment industry.
All 3 hosts, Barnes, Leslie, and Cubby, have worked or are currently working in radio or TV production in some form or fashion, from Billboard to Rolling Stones and even CMT, and I swear every single place in between. These guys have worked in every part of the entertainment industry. They know pop culture. And I've listened to a few of the episodes, and it's a really fun show. I've learned a heck of a lot. Not only do they talk about what their take is on what's going on in the world of entertainment, but they have some great interviews as well. They've interviewed people like the WWE champ Goldberg, rock stars like Jewel, Butch Walker, Collective Soul, and one of my favorites, after hearing that they interviewed him, I went and listened to it myself. They interviewed Joe Gatto from Impractical Jokers, and I loved hearing some like behind the scenes of this show that's so successful and for so long. And it started with just 2 friends. Literally, they've been friends since like high school and made fun of each other and stuff for that long. It was a great interview.
Basically, it's just a really fun, hour-long ride through the halls of pop culture that leaves you laughing, informed, and excited for the next episode of The Pop Culture Show. Find out more about the show on popcultureshow.com or listen anywhere you find your podcasts. So, I discovered something that we have all experienced, and it's called CNN Airport. I always thought that airport TVs they just put on the cable news or whatever and they pick a channel. There is a specific channel called CNN Airport that is designed specifically for airports.
I did not know that.
It is a 24-hour scheduling. It is, and they said roughly on this Wikipedia, but by the way, 20 years of Wikipedia, everybody. Go Wikipedia. But they have a 24-hour schedule.
You can almost
16% is live news, 19% is live sports, 24% is lifestyle, 24% is travel, and 10% is for local stuff at that airport specifically. So basically, it started in 1991, and they wanted to try and really isolate kind of how people are watching at an airport, because you want it to be something so that people are seeing stuff constantly, because you kind of just have people wandering around, people sitting. And so you have to try and mix up everything so that people are always getting the right mixture of TV, essentially.
It's so weird when you hear people talk about how intentional they are about things that we just take for granted, like that.
Yes.
Like it just like you said, it just, we would think they got TVs, they're just going to throw on the news somewhere, some random channel.
Yeah. No, and literally CNN Airport airs in 58 airports in the U.S., and CNN will pay those airports to display the channel exclusively on their monitors. So any of these...
I would have thought the opposite. I thought the airports would have to pay them.
No, I bet it's cheaper to just get a big old cable subscription. But essentially, they would do a lot of stuff. And because it's an airport and people are there middle of the night and whatever, and maybe don't want to watch like the weather report, they would also... It was not just CNN, so they had Cartoon Network and Turner Classic Movies, HBO, TBS, full-length NFL games, playoffs, and everything like that. And since I discovered this, there has been a press release on CNN Airport. At the end of March, CNN Airport will close because of the lack of people going to the airport. And because essentially now because this started in the 90s. Everybody didn't have a cell phone. Everybody didn't have a tablet and a laptop and a cell phone. And they didn't have any options. So what was on TV was important. It is not anymore, because I can't remember the last time I actually watched TV at an airport at all. But literally he announced
headphones
this.
in. When you're at an airport, your goal is to not interact with anybody. And this was before COVID. I can't even imagine what it's like since COVID.
It's
just
very odd.
headphones, sit down, space between you, and enjoy the space because you're about to not have any.
Yeah, I've been on one flight since everything happened, and it was really weird. It was a very weird vibe because there's a lot less people. I got through the line really quick. Everybody is wearing a mask. There's a lot more room, so like the restaurants and everything are closed down. I basically just went and found somewhere alone, like away. I flew Southwest, and at the time, at least, they probably still are. I don't know, but they would leave all the middle rows empty, so the entire plane didn't have middle rows. So you were at least a seat away from everyone. But it's really weird to be on an airplane, and like I think I wore like a hoodie and like sweatpants, so I could literally lose the hoodie, lose the sweatpants, lose the mask as soon as I got there, and I just didn't wear them again until I
could wash them.
Yeah. But I mean, I was going to get my car, so I drove back. So I just had to do a one way. But yeah, it's definitely super odd. But yeah, they basically cited that essentially everybody has phones now. And also, nobody's going to the airport right now for the most part.
Yeah. Well, I guess they can pivot to like gas station TV, which is a thing too.
It's
and that's
terrible.
The worst.
They have not nailed that.
No,
it almost annoys me worse when it turns on because it won't always be on. It's like as soon as you pick up the pump, it starts yelling at you. It's like, just get out of here. I don't want to.
It's like 80% ads, and then like
I don't want to hear Jimmy Fallon make one joke.
Yeah, and it's like a tiny 2-second clip, and you're like, okay, I don't like this. There's something about it. I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like this. It is grating somehow. So I have a really quick discovery. I do want you to show this one into the chat if you get a chance to, Zach.
Let's kick it over.
So I remember it was right before we went on our Christmas break that you talked about the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico collapsed. It had collapsed, and basically it hadn't been maintained, and it was probably going to shut down, which was like heartbreaking because it was such a important thing for scientists because they literally would be able to buy time slots and do whatever kind of research they wanted to do. Even like, extraterrestrial scientists that were trying to find aliens or alien planets were able to use it. It was kind of indiscriminate who was allowed to use it as long as you allotted the time, and I'm sure you have to pay something. But China is to open for the first time their fast telescope to foreign scientists, including those searching for alien life. And this telescope looks exactly like Arecibo.
It really does.
This one is not in disrepair and falling apart. These telescopes are crazy. They are so big. And this is the world's largest radio telescope. So I think it's actually bigger than the one in Puerto Rico. But they're opening it up for all these slots for people to be able to rent it out and do whatever research they want to do. They're only allocating 10% of the total observational time slots to requests from overseas, but they're opening it for the first time. It's never been open to people outside of China until now. And I think it may have been kind of a little bit in response to the Arecibo telescope collapsing.
So that's a kind of cool legacy for Arecibo, is they kind of inspired them to open that up and let people kind of collaborate like they were doing.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a quick discovery. It's nothing. They go pretty deep in this article, but I mean, the TLDR is, hey, there's a giant telescope in China as well. So we don't have to be as sad as we were about the one that got destroyed by the hurricanes in Puerto Rico, because there's another one in China.
Yeah, no, and I think they have plans for Arecibo. I think there was pretty strong response to it going down. So I think they're already planning what they can do next.
Yeah, that would be nice if they were able to get it working again. I actually didn't know about it until we talked about it.
Yeah.
And then I looked into it. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
I just remembered it from, I didn't know what it was for. I remembered it from Goldeneye for sure. I remember that scene in Goldeneye where they're like, I think they dropped Sean Bean into it. I think he literally craters on the bottom of it is how he dies in that movie. Spoiler alert for a movie from the 90s.
GoldenEye. I just remember. I don't even remember that movie, but I remember the video game.
Oh no, that's a good movie though. That's a good one. So I brought a discovery this week because I feel like there's a lot of bad news right now.
Yeah, there's so much bad news. I thought
And
2021 would be a little bit better, and I still have hopes. But it's off to not a great start.
We're in the hangover phase right now.
We are hungover. We are just very hungover from 2020, right?
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. It's the hangover from 2020.
But I found out about an amazing plumber out of the UK. In 2017, James Anderson, who was called to a home for a second opinion and caught a heating company who'd attempted to con an elderly and disabled man out of €5,500. Disgusted and disheartened by this, he founded, I think it's pronounced DEFR, which is Disabled and Elderly Plumbing and Heating Emergency Response, and has since 2017 has helped more than 10,000 families.
What?
Basically,
holy cow!
He's 53 years old and has worked as a plumber for a really long time, and he has just pledged to help disabled and elderly people no matter what. And since COVID has happened, that has expanded. He is now doing food parcels, personal protective equipment, and even paying bills for people. He says that he has spent
awesome.
Yeah, he says he spent €57,000 during the pandemic, but it was worth every penny because it kept people alive and warm. There's a quote from him. If you've got disabilities, issues, sometimes these things can become too difficult to overcome, and we want to make sure they're taken care of. We've got a social responsibility to each other. We need to be there for each other. He currently works with plumbers based in Lancashire, Manchester, Leeds, Nottingham, and parts of Scotland, and hopes to eventually cover the whole of the UK. He has a GoFundMe page, which that will also be linked in the show notes because
for sure.
Why not? Like the guy is just trying to help people. But basically he has this GoFundMe to just try and help people,
And it's such a shame because like that kind of stuff happens here in Florida in particular. So
it's really
much.
bad.
It's so bad. And like we actually let's just say the phone calls, we get phone calls on stuff like scams like that all the time because we live in Florida and they just are hoping we're an elderly person that's just going to fall for it.
Yep.
And it's a shame. Like it's really, it just boils my blood because I've seen people take advantage of elderly people and it's not cool.
Yeah. And these guys are the opposite of that. Between Christmas Day and New Year alone, he and a local team of 3 volunteers, 3 apprentices, and 4 engineers took on 93 free jobs.
Dang.
He says, I work 7 days a week, 70 hours a week. I haven't taken a single day off. I'll have enough rest when I'm dead. So wanted to give everybody here. I'm gonna show everybody a picture of him as well.
I need to see this guy
because it's worth seeing this guy. So yeah, I'll also link his GoFundMe. But on the plus side, his GoFundMe has already beaten his goal. They've raised €20,000, and so it's just a really cool thing. His group that's literally just trying to support the elderly and the needy with these services is fantastic. So I don't know. It's always we always go back to the Mr. Rogers quote where it's always easy to look at the bad stuff, but it's just as easy to look for the helpers because they are there as well.
That's awesome. That's a good thing to end the episode on. Now I feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
No, I read it and I was like, this guy sounds awesome. So I'm going to talk about him.
That's a good hangover cure. So hopefully we get more people like that and we can get over this 2020 hangover sometime soon.
But yeah, thanks so much for joining us for Discovery Weekly this week. We had a great time discovering new stuff. We hope you get in touch in all the different ways. We have everything linked in our show notes. And
give us a call on the hotline. We haven't got any calls yet this year.
We should do a hotline plug. We have that in the show notes as well. I wish I remembered it. Everybody call us at the Discovery Hotline. We'd love to hear from you. You can say whatever your random discovery is for the week, or you can just say hi. We'd love to hear from you. Our number is 813-708-9118. That is the Discovery Hotline.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys. And remember, this is the Discovery Weekly Show.
I like that ending. Cut. Talk to you guys next week. I want him to do that every time we end.
It's just reminding myself that it's no longer the other Discovery show.
No, do not cut that part. Leave that part in there. That's our new tagline.
And remember, this is Discovery Weekly.
Was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.